Thank you very much. It was beautiful. You know, Jesus said in the Sermon on the Mount, you are light. And don't hide your light under a bushel basket, okay? But let everybody see it. And you know, most of us want and have that desire. I mean, if I say to somebody, you want to be the light in the world, they say, sure. But sometimes we don't know the tools to use in order to be that light. And so for the next several Sundays and during May, we're going to be talking about some of those tools and the different laws of the universe and how we can use them to be the light. And of course, we're going to start off, as many people would expect, with the law of attraction, with maybe a little different twist. I'm not sure this morning. I hope so. And take a look at that from the perspective of what do we have to do to use the law of attraction? There are so many people who are teaching about the law of attraction. We've seen movies on it. We've seen motivational speakers. And some of them, not all of them, but some of them can make it simple. You know, think this thought and take action. I think Jesus, again, on the Sermon on the Mount, made a statement was all about the law of attraction. He said, ask, and it will be given you. Search, and you will find. Knock, and the door will be open for you. This morning, metaphysically, I want to talk about the words ask, search, or seek, as some of you have heard it, and knock. What do these mean, metaphysically? And as we look at the word ask, let's remember also Jesus said in another gospel, ask believing, and you will receive. But most people think about ask and receive. They leave the believing out. Because you see, we all want to get it done instantaneously. We want results automatically and quick. And yet, the law of attraction really doesn't work that way. It is a process that we have to learn. It is a process that we have to step into. I've had people in my office say, I ask and I don't receive. I take action and I don't get results. I affirm, and my experience has been that the affirmations don't change anything for me. Now, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with asking. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with taking action. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with affirmations. It's just the process we use to do that. And we can use anything in a process that's out of order, and we're not going to get the result we want. So this morning, let's talk a little bit about this idea of what's in order. So when Jesus said ask, he was really saying, yes, ask for what you want, but be sure you know what you want. And that is a process. Because you see, what we want, in most cases, is hidden from us unless we do some work. So Jesus also said search. And metaphysically, I see the word of search meaning get to know yourself. Search inside yourself. What are you really thinking? What are your real core values? What does your world look like as you search? So become the observer, become the witness, and look at your world and say, is it the world that I want to be in? Is it the world that's working for me? Or am I frustrated with it overall? Am I unhappy? Am I ill at ease? Where am I really when it comes to this idea of searching? And I think when Jesus was talking about searching, he was talking about the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is what controls how we live our lives. It's not always what we say consciously. I mean, I can stand on this stage for weeks and say, I want a new Mercedes-Benz convertible. And I can say it every Sunday. And it's unlikely, unless Vicki would let me go deeply into debt, that I'm going to get a new Mercedes-Benz convertible. And so part of it is being realistic in what we ask for, but it doesn't mean we can't ask for the sky. It simply means we want to know what the sky consists of in order to ask. And is there something blocking my thinking, something blocking who I am and what I am, so that I cannot reach in and bring forth those infinite possibilities that are within me? You see, in order to change our world, we must be willing to create a new blueprint in our subconscious mind. Again, one of the things we do is we take action. When you go to seminars on how to get things done, they'll always tell you to have a plan and take action. And yes, that's important. But many times they put it like the second thing to do. Think this thought and then take action. In unity, there are 5 principles. Guess where the action principle is? It's the 5th principle, because it says you've got to do some work. Now, what we teach in unity is that we believe that there is one presence and one power. We call it God, the creative force, the I am, that exists within each of us. And it is good. The second principle is that it does exist with in each one of us. I always just like to keep it simple. Christ in you, your hope of glory. The third one is the law of mind action, the law of attraction. They're one and the same. So what I think about, what I focus on, I will bring into my life. If, this is left out, if I'm willing to do the work to get rid of the stuff that doesn't help me any longer. And as I start to do that work, what happens is that I start to slowly but surely change the image of myself from within. And when I do that, I get an outpicturing of light that's different than what I had before. Because I'm cleaning up my stuff. I've been programmed. Bruce Lipton, who is at Stanford University Medical Center, he is the fellow who actually proved, in essence, through science, that cells in our bodies have individual intelligence. They are directed by us, but they do have intelligence. And it changed his life, by the way, when he found that out. He started to see the world from a spiritual basis rather than a scientific basis. And he understood the two went together, but the spiritual became more important to him. He said, it's your subconscious mind that ultimately casts the deciding vote on how much success, abundance, happiness, health, and freedom you can experience in your life. He recently gave a speech in Australia, and I want to take an excerpt from that and let you just listen to what he says about programming.
Your life is not coming from your conscious wishes and desires. Your life is coming from your program. And why is that relevant? Because I said, think about it this way. I take 3 different cells. And I say, Muslim cell, Jewish cell, Christian cell. I say, are they different entities? I go, no. Those religious things are programs that are downloaded into the mind of the child. What was most important? They all come from the same source. They all represent the same spirit coming to the planet. Your source is not the program. You can take a child from one religion as an infant and have it adopted by another family from a different religion. The child grows up in that religion. The religion wasn't built into the system. It was a program. We've been programmed. And I said, what's the function of the programs? And the answer is this. The mind is designed to take your programs and your beliefs and turn them into reality. This simple sentence is very profound and complex when you get down to it. The function of your mind is to create coherence between what you believe and the life reality you experience. Henry Ford said it simply. He said, if you believe you can, or you believe you can't, you're right. Meaning what? Whatever you're...
Interesting, huh? So, you see, 95% is what psychologists and sociologists say, and scientists say. 95% of the way that we function is because of our subconscious beliefs. Only 5% is consciousness. So if I sit around without working on my subconscious and say, I am a child of God, therefore I am very wealthy, okay? I am a child of God, therefore I have no illness in my life. I am a child of God, therefore I have great relationships. And I get up the next day and nothing's changed. I don't have any money in the bank. Kind of on a survival mode. My relationships are coming apart because I don't have any money in the bank and other issues in my life. And I then start to have illness in my life because what I'm depending on is just my brain saying that, you see, not my heart. And the subconscious mind is really controlled by the heart. And no matter what we do, no matter what blueprint we set for success, no matter what we learn, no matter what we know, will make any difference if we don't do the work of reprogramming the subconscious mind. And when we begin that programming, when we take the first steps, when we're willing to change the results in our life, what happens is we start to create a new universe and we start to manifest the infinite possibilities that exist within each of us. We grow. We begin to see ourselves differently because, you see, we start to see ourselves through the eyes we would of God metaphysically. We start to see ourselves as the perfect idea in the mind of God, divine mind. And we start to do that, we start to understand we have this light within us that has to shine. But again, we have to get past just saying it. We have to get into believing that with all our hearts. We have to believe that we are spiritual beings. If we think we're human beings looking for a spiritual result, we're going to not do very well with that, to be honest. Because we're looking at a result from the program they talked about rather than a result from going within. And the source is spirit. And so as we work on that process, what happens is we begin to change. You know, they did an interesting study in 1980 or before 1980. Dr. Charles Garfield did the research on it. And what happened is that the Soviet athletes for the 1980 Olympics were prepared years in advance, of course. And what they did is they took one group, and the number one group, they spent 100% of their time in physical training, in the how-tos, in developing the techniques of how to do whatever it was they were doing. The second group spent 25% of their time thinking about it, in cognitive work, and 75% of the time in the physical aspect of preparing themselves for what they did. Another group, number three, spent 50% of their time in the physical and 50% of the time in the cognitive. And then there was a group four. They spent 75% of their time, in a sense, thinking about who they were, what they were, and how they could form, and 25% of their time in the physical training of how to do it. Group number four, 75% of the time up here, in here. 25% physically being able to do it. Succeeded far above all the other groups in those Olympics. Guess who number one were, where they just worked on the physical training and the techniques and everything? It was the Russian ice hockey team of 1980, who were beat by the United States for one of the first times and one of the only times ever. Isn't that an interesting thing? You see, it's what we think. If you listen to athletes, if you listen to celebrities, they all talk about this law of attraction today. This law of mind action, where what we think about and what we believe can happen will eventually happen, but it takes time. And it takes a couple other things too. So, Jesus said search. And we search our minds. And we deny the negative, and we are ready, in essence, to take on the affirmative. And when we're ready for that, then we can knock on the door. And the way we knock is, number one, by changing our habits. You know, if I were in a recovery program and I came out of recovery and I went right back after 30 or 45 days or 90 days and right back to my friends before, right back to where they gather together, right back in the same environment, what's the probability that I'm going to change? Very little. I'm going to probably go out of recovery. But if I make new friends, develop new habits, go to meetings with people of a like mind, with people who are in recovery, can support me, it's then that I've got a chance of surviving, a big chance, because I start to learn new things. I start to reprogram myself. I start to understand that there is a source that's higher than I am that can support me and guide me and direct me. See, that's changing the subconscious mind. There's a lady by the name of Lisa Nichols, and she teaches about creative visualization. Lisa was born in South Carolina, in South Central LA. And she had no money at the time. At one point, she had no money to feed her son, as she said. She didn't have a very good education. She was on assistance, welfare, at that time. And she was struggling, obviously. Life was tough. And then she read a book on the power of imagination, the power of creative visualization. And she started to do that. And what she found as she really got into it, and this took several years. By the way, she didn't just say, oh, I no longer have any problem with bringing food to the table. And all of a sudden she looked and there was all kinds of food on the table. It didn't work that way. It took several years of focusing on and imagining things differently before things started to work for her. Today, she is a motivational speaker. There's plenty of food on the table. She is educating her son, and she has gone back and educated herself. It's because, you see, what she said is I changed the way I saw the world, and I did it one step at a time. Through the power of creative visualization, through the power of imagination, if you would. And Charles Fillmore said that the creation of a mental representation of anything not actually present in the senses, the creation of a mental representation of anything not actually present to the senses, is the power of imagination. It is the ability to manifest a mental picture and bring into manifestation by the power of imagination that mental picture. So we have to change our habits, we have to create new habits, and we have to use the power of imagination to do that. When we talk about imagination, we're not just talking about daydreaming, though that's part of it. We're not just talking about having an idea and get all excited about it. I do that sometimes. I got this new idea. I get all excited. I tell Vicki about it. She says, that's a great idea. A year later, I tell Vicki about it. And she says, that's a great idea. And a year later, I tell Vicki about it. And she says, I don't think you're going to do anything about that idea. Right? Because it just happens once a year that I get the idea. We get excited about things. But any time that I take the time to sit and imagine something to the degree that I can feel it, I can actually feel what it feels like to be in that place of change. What it's like to manifest that which I am so desiring. When I can touch it, literally feel that I can touch it, because I have this tremendous picture in my mind of this idea. When I feel that I can smell it, literally. I mean, have you ever thought about a donut or something you really love, or chocolate, okay? Have you ever just closed your eye? Have you ever smelled it in your mouth? Sure. See, we all can do it. So I smell it. And then I let my heart go and let my heart develop the idea even further. And through that process of imagination, you know what I'm doing? I'm reprogramming my subconscious. And when I reprogram my subconscious, in time, I will take the action that is necessary because I will stand at the door and knock. I will knock on the door of opportunity. I will knock on the door of change. I will knock on the door that says yes to my infinite possibilities. And you know, more importantly, in time, I will find the desires of my heart. What I really want in my life. What's really important to me. And how do I demonstrate that? How do I manifest that? How do I become this child of God? How do I let myself and others know that I am a spiritual being, first and foremost? And as a spiritual being, I have control over my life. You know, sometimes what we really need to do is that we need to remember that like attracts like. We have to remember, and this is Steve Harvey's statement, if you see it in your hand, you can hold it. If you see it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. I love to say, don't believe what you're seeing, see what you believe. And when you do that, you start to reprogram. You are reprogramming literally that subconscious mind. Sometimes what we have to do is we have to tell our old programs to get out of the driver's seat so we can drive the car. I have to tell my mother, get out of the driver's seat and let me drive. I have to tell my minister, get out of the driver's seat and let me drive. I have to tell my teachers, get out of the driver's seat and let me drive. And if they keep persisting, I tell them to get out of the car. And I want to find a new passenger that's going to support me. Because I know, with all good intention, that I have been programmed for all those individuals to become what they wanted me to become, maybe not what I wanted to become. And so when I'm willing to step up to that, then what happens, you see, is I start to ask believing. And then I know I will receive. I start to search for a new subconscious blueprint. And I receive. I start to knock on the door of opportunity. The door that is the power of my imagination. And what I start to imagine, I create. It's part of my DNA now. It's part of who I am and what I am. Because I started off with the belief that there is this creative source. And I believe that this creative force exists within me and within you. And then I said, you know, I want to change my habits. I want to change what I'm doing. And I used that law of mind action, that law of attraction to do it. And then I used prayer and meditation to affirm and confirm all that I want. That's how I train my thoughts. That's how I train myself to become even more. And the last thing, keep on keeping on. Thank you.